Okay. Welcome everyone to Fundamentals of Kabbalah and Chassidut, continuing our series on the life and teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. We are going to continue tonight learning the Baal Shem Tov's teachings about prayer. We've been learning from the text called Amud HaTefillah, the pillar of prayer. I believe this is our third week of doing this, maybe the fourth. And we're just going to continue with the different teachings given over by his students and students of his students. As we've said many times, the Baal Shem Tov did not write anything himself. It was all left to the students to record what he had said. Okay, so here we're going to begin with a really, really important one from the Baal Shem Tov, even though he doesn't spell it out in full. So I'll give a little bit background here that he's going to deal with the word chashmal. Chashmal is, in modern Hebrew, is electricity. Excuse me. It is considered one of the most mysterious, mystical words in the whole Tanakh because it's paradoxical, because chash means silent and mal means speaking. So here we have this idea of what we call the sounds of silence, or kol demama daka, the silent, still, thin voice that Eliyahu Navi heard in the desert from God. But what the Baal Shem Tov adds here, even though he doesn't say it specifically, but this is definitely one of the sources, one of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov is that anytime you have two opposites, you're going to always have an intermediary in between them, or not even two opposites. If you have a flow of energy from one thing to another thing, there will always be an intermediary. And so many of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, his primary teachings, have three stages. And some of these we've discussed many times before. One is hachna'ah, havdalah, and hamtaka, submission, separation, and sweetening. Again, in triplets. And we began the whole discussion of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings on prayer with the idea that every letter has worlds, souls, and divinity. Olamot, Nishamot, and Elokut. Now here with Hashmal, let's hear what he says. And even though he doesn't say it, but he adds an intermediary that became known as Chashmal Mal. Why? Because the word mal actually has two meanings. One means speech, like we said before. Chash is silence. Mal is speaking. And the word mal, though, also has the word as in circumcision, Brit Milah, which means to cut off. And so the Baal Shem Tov said between Chash and Mal, there's going to have to be an intermediary. And because Mal has two meanings, it's very, very connected to Hachna'ah, submission, is like silence, Chash. And Mal, in the idea of cutting off, is connected to separation. And then Mal, meaning speech, is connected to sweetening. Submission, separation, and sweetening. Chash, mal, mal. So let's hear what he says exactly. Again, this is through the words of his students. Soda chashmal, he says, the secret of chashmal, and he quotes where it comes from in Yecheskel, Ezekiel. So he says, itim chashot ve'itim mamalalot. The sages say that what is this energy of Chashmal that Ezekiel saw? And so he says that it's a group of angels that sometimes are silent and sometimes are speaking. That's what the sages say. But the deeper Kabbalistic idea is Chashmal is simultaneous. It's a silent voice. So he continues. Shetzarich lachashot ad shemal v'koret haklipot. That here he's talking about a person, and especially in prayer. A person has to be silent until he can cut off the klipot, the outside energy, the negative energy. So that's what you see. He's adding the mal, chash, mal, and then he says, az yachol yedaber. Then a person can speak. That's the mal. Lishtok harenav, namatek hadinim b'shorshan. This process of silence, then cutting off extraneous thoughts, negative thoughts. This sweetens the judgment. So you see how he's connecting submission, separation, and sweetening to silence, cutting off, and then speech. So here, this is the idea that it says in the Mishnah that the early Hasidim, they would meditate for an hour before the prayer, the Amida, and they would meditate for an hour afterwards. Now, this could mean that they took an hour in the preliminary prayers, Sukkot Zimra, the Shema, but they were in a meditative state. This is the chash, the silence. What does the silence do? In a meditative state of mind, we try to distance ourselves from extraneous thoughts and focus and enter into this meditative state, and then we can speak. And those are the words of prayer. So here he's setting up a dynamic based on Chashmal, but he's explaining Chashmal Mal as a formula for all prayer. That first we need to quiet the noise, and then we have to cut off from that noise, and then we could speak words of tefillah. So he says, and that's how we sweeten judgments in their root. And this is the secret of prayer. Sheyivaer mori b'shem rabo. And this is again a student of the Baal Shem Tov, who says that this is what his Rebbe taught, whose Baal Shem Tov's Rebbe taught him. And who was that? Achia Hashiloni. That was his heavenly mentor, was a prophet from the time, who was Eliyahu Navi's Rebbe. But this heavenly soul came back to the Baal Shem Tov and was his teacher from the age of 26 to 36 and even afterwards. So here, this is a very, very important thing. The Baal Shem Tov is saying, he's teaching us a formula of prayer, that we just don't jump into prayer when we're thinking about 100 of other things. First comes the hush. We have to silence everything else that is happening and understand these next minutes or time period is devoted to prayer, devoted to connecting to God. And after the silence comes the separation or the cutting off of any thoughts that are going to take us away from concentrating on our prayers. And then we can sweeten the judgments through the words of prayer. So this is an incredibly basic idea from the Baal Shem Tov on prayer. L'chaim, everyone. L'chaim. Okay. The next one. You'll notice maybe you've never seen me wear my glasses before, but the print in this book is quite small. And so I'm going to be using my glasses. So the next idea from the Baal Shem Tov. Yikaven b'tefillah she'ma'orer otiyot shenivru behem shemayim v'oretz. So a person should have the intention that when they are davening, that the letters of the prayer are awakening the same energy with which God created the heavens and the earth. And through the letters of the Torah, the Aleph Bet, God created the heavens and the earth and all the creations in the upper worlds and the lower worlds. Kol olamot kulam, all the different worlds, through the letters of that we see in prayer. Ve'im kain ba'amru tefillah b'hashvachim ku omer im kol ha'olamot. So now he's saying just a beautiful thing. He's saying, so therefore, when a person is davening and is saying the words of the Torah, which are made from the letters, and these are the letters through which God created all of the worlds, that he's actually connecting to all of the worlds, because all creations in one way or another are praising Hashem. If we look in the prayers every day, we speak specifically about how the angels are praising God every day. But here it's saying on a deep level, and for those who have my newest book, Life, Soul, and Consciousness in All Creation, that was the premise of the book, that even in the mineral world, the vegetable world, and the animal world, there is soul, consciousness, and life. And all of that is, in a sense, connecting and praising God. So the Baal Shem Tov says that when we say the prayers, and especially when we mention the angels, we mention the trees and the forests and the rivers and the oceans, that we are joining with all of creation in praising Hashem. Kihu ma'orer ha'otiyot, because God is the one who is enlivening the very letters that we are davening with. Ha'otiyot hem ha'chiyut shel hanivraim, and the names of each being or entity, the Hebrew letters are not just what we call them, they are the life force of that creation. Ve'im kain, im kulam hu omer, umala et hanivraim mishamayim v'aretz b'kavanah zu. So therefore, he's saying that when we understand that, especially let's say in Psuki de Zimra, when we're talking about nature, there's a lot of references to nature and the heavens and rain and snow and animals and trees. He's saying that we should have the consciousness of connecting to all of creation in our davening. And then he says, by doing so, it actually raises up all of the creations of heaven and earth through our prayers. The al yedei b'nei ha'aliyah shemit b'kavana hem ma'orin gam ha'otiyot shel pechutei erech. Then he says, not only do our prayers connect with all of the creations, lift up all of the creations, but when, let's say, we're davening with a minyan, and there are all kinds of people, everyone is, trying to pray the best they can. So he's saying, but if someone is davening with these kind of kavanot, these kind of intentions, that energy is going to fill the room. And those people who maybe don't understand the prayers so much, they will be inspired through the energy that is being produced by someone who has these kavanas. So this is a very, very important idea, especially when we're davening with a group of people. This will spill over and will inspire everyone who is davening there to daven with more intent and more energy, more inspiration. And will help make them better people. Baal Shem Tov gilaze gamken v'amar letamidav tzarich ata litpalel afilu al of haporeach hamitzavtzef v'chein b'divrei Torah livnei adam lochicham mo'il kavanazu leho'alim. He's here, okay, sorry. Okay, I see you. Yeah. That was my wife waiting to get on the broadcast. Okay. I assume she is in now. Yes. Okay. Okay, and so to translate this last thing. So he says that the Baal Shem revealed this secret to his students. And he told them that, remember we said before that a person should connect to all of creation through their prayers. So he said he should even connect to a bird that is flying through the air and singing. In other words, if you're diving out in nature, that should be aware that not only are you surrounded by trees and flowers and plants, but also there are animals and birds, and we should connect to them. And he says also when learning Torah that having this kavana of being connected to the whole creation, because the letters of Tefillah and Torah are the same letters to which God creates the heaven and earth. And when we keep that in mind, first of all, it inspires us. It adds tremendous energy and inspiration to the prayers. But here he's saying it has an effect on all of the worlds, especially if you're davening with other people. This will help everyone to pray in a deeper, more inspired manner. Okay. Continuing. Shemati b'shem mori ha'inyan ha'tefillah b'kavanatah. So one of the students is saying, I heard this from my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, about the matters of prayer and intent. V'yichudim, making unifications. That we've mentioned before, the Arizal and later Kabbalists gave us a whole set of different unifications when davening, meaning that we connect our davening to the Sfirot and to different names of God and the worlds and the different levels of soul. One second. Okay. Shetzarich likshor et atzmo behem. That a person needs to connect their prayers to intent and not to say them like blankly without thinking about what they mean. We need to connect our thought process with our words. B'yadua shehu olam katan, ubehitorarut delamata yitoraru lamala. So he says, and it's known that a human being is a small world. And when they understand the power of their prayers from below, it awakens the upper worlds. In other words, this idea is one of the fundamental ideas of Kabbalah and Hasidut, that, and it's not the easiest to understand, but it's a basic belief that our thought, speech, and action, it's obvious that affects this world, our thoughts, our speech, and our action. But what Kabbalah and Hasidut is teaching, it also affects the higher worlds, that it has an effect. And it just like the higher worlds most certainly have an effect on the lower worlds. In other words, the spiritual worlds, of course, have an effect on the physical material world. But here it's saying us in the physical material world also have an influence in the upper worlds. And a lot of it comes through prayer and the intent that we put into prayer. Yashpia lamata ad madrigato shel zeh adam amekaven zeh umekabel hashpa'a. But let me just go back a second. So here it's there's a synergy going on, that our prayers from below affect the upper worlds, and then the upper worlds in turn affect us. In other words, it's a kind of like run and return. It's an active circular energy. The more energy we put from below in trying to lift up the worlds and to unite with God, then that has an effect, and that effect showers down on us, which then affects us even in a deeper way. So the Baal Shem is teaching this idea here, which of course is connected to the words of prayer, that what we've learned so far tonight, if we are doing our best to daven with this kind of all-inclusive, all of creation kind of consciousness, it will affect the upper worlds, which then in turn affect the lower worlds. Continuing. So it says in Yeshayahu, it says in Isaiah, in the 8th chapter, Sha'al locha ot me'im Hashem Elokecha. Ask of God for a sign. An ot means letter, but it also means a sign. So here in the simple meaning, it means ask of God for a sign. But the Baal Shem Tov says, Rotzeh lomar, shetitchanen v'tishal me'akadosh baruch hu, sheyiten lecha ot, dainu ha'otiyot shemedaber b'torah u'tefillah. So he says that it can mean a sign, but here it means much more. Remember, all of this has to do with prayer. And so we've learned for a couple of weeks now the importance that the Baal Shem Tov puts into the power, the energy of the letters of prayer, that they have worlds, souls, and divinity in each letter. And each letter is uplifting and connecting and unifying all the worlds. And we're connecting to our inner soul, we're connecting to God, we're connecting to other people. We're lifting ourselves up, we're lifting the worlds up, we're lifting other people up. We're helping to rectify the world. And so here he says that we should ask God for the letters of the Torah that we use when learning and praying. That, in other words, these letters should come alive for us. They should inspire us. They should move us. Minotona dveikim im Hashem Elokecha, shetizkeh lechaber otam l'shorsham. So that we're asking God, give us a doorway, an entrance to understanding the letters of prayer and Torah, that we can use them to connect to you, to cling to you. And through this, we could get to the root of the power and energy in the letters to which God created the world. So in other words, what we're asking for is God reveal to us how to take these letters of prayer and learning Torah and make them come alive for us. Let them inspire us, give us life, that we can give life to others. These are very, very relatively simple ideas, but super fundamental to having a deep and profound consciousness about what prayer is about, what the possibilities of prayer are about. Everything we've been talking about is how to take prayer and seeing it more than just an obligation, an important obligation as an individual and as a community, but how to make prayer into a potent, exciting, joyous, alive experience. All of these Torahs are going in that direction. That's what the Baal Shem is trying to teach us. Now he says, carrying on with these same ideas, Yachshov shemit palel, kishemit palel shebaotiyot mitlabesh Hashem Yitbarach. Not only are these letters channels and vehicles through which God created the world, but here he says that the letters enclose God himself. Perush. Now he wants to explain. De'enanu yodim masha adam choshev elim kain medaber. So he's going to bring like a metaphor here, that we don't know what a person is thinking until they speak. We have no idea what is going through people's minds until they say what's on their mind, until they speak. Nimsa hoya hadibur malbush lemachshava. So here we see that speech encloses thought. Thought is enclosed in speech. I'll just say that a little fun, except for those times when we speak without thinking, which unfortunately many of us do at the wrong time and we regret it. But in general, we usually think and then we speak. So he says, V'yomer b'libo, melech gadol kazeh ani oseh lo malbush. So a person, when they're praying, should think in their heart that God, the King of the universe, I am going to make I'm going to make a vessel for godliness through my prayers. That through my praying, I will enclose God through my words. And so if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to become a proper vessel for God, so he says it's appropriate that I do that in great joy. And I pour my whole being into my prayers. Because if we do this, we are uniting ourselves with the Holy One, blessed be He. The Baal Shem says it like right out. Ki kocho ha'otiot, because His power, God's power, is in the letters of the Torah. Uba'ot shoreh HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in the letters themselves, God encloses His energy. Excuse me. And that's how we unite with Hashem. In other words, when we realize, he doesn't mention it here, but I think in one of the upcoming ones, he says that's what it means in the Zohar. Yisrael, Torah, and God are one. Yisrael, Torah, and God are one. So here he's saying that a person can become a vessel for godliness. That the Torah is a vessel for God's will. But they're all one. So and Israel can become a vessel for the letters of Torah and Tefillah. And so here, the Baal Shem is like putting it all together. And obviously, the Baal Shem Tov is trying to teach us this very, very elevated, spiritual, mystical consciousness for prayer. He's like pulling no punches here. He's trying to express the possibilities, the opportunity of connecting to God, connecting to the energy through which God creates the world, to connect to all of the creations of the world, all through our prayer. And so when we look at the words of prayer, that's what helps us do it. It's not like this is all like in the head. When we're reading the verses of the prayers, it's mentioning everything that the Baal Shem Tov is talking about. But he's saying the whole idea is that we have to have the kavana, this very, very high elevated kavana, that the possibility of prayer gives us a chance to connect directly to God. Not only connect, to be a vessel for God. And that's why before we begin the Amida, he's going to say this in a different place. Hopefully we'll get to it. We say Hashem sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tilatecha. before we begin the Amidah, we say, Hashem, open up my lips so my mouth can express your praises. So the Baal Shem Tov, like I said, we might get to it, says that basically what we're asking is God to speak through us, that we should be a channel for God's thoughts, God's prayers, our highest, where the soul is an actual part of God above. But if you think about what it says, Hashem sifatai tiftach ufi yagid letecha. Hashem, open up my lips that I may speak your praises. This is the idea of, we speak about Moshe, especially the book of Devarim that we're learning now, that it says that the Shekhinah was speaking through the mouth of Moshe. Moshe was a clear vessel for the will, thoughts of God coming through him. So Baal Shem Tov is saying, basically, we all have that possibility. But of course, we have to work at it. Okay, continuing. Ein dibur below machshava. There's no speaking without thought. Ki mikodem hu choshev ma sheyedaber. Because before a person speaks, they think about what they want to say. Hine kishe choshev kodem atefila ma sheyedaber v'lifnei mi yedaber bevadai tipol olav yira ubusha sheyeh yira min adiburim atzmam. So here, before I translate this, I wanted to tell a quick story. That it's told that after the Baal Shem Tov passed away, he came to one of his students in a dream and said, "Why is everyone talking about all the miracles I did? Why aren't they talking about my fear and awe and honor and respect of God?" Because in the Baal Shem Tov's eyes, that was far more important than miracle stories, because that's what he wanted to give over to people. This incredible awe of God, awe of the letters of the Torah, awe of prayer. So now I'll translate what I just read. So it says that before a person prays, they should think, who am I going to be praying to? Now, this sounds like such an obvious thing, but it's not obvious at all. Because as important as it is to approach prayer as an obligation, and it is important because many, many people get up in the morning and say, I don't have time today to pray. I don't feel like praying. I'm not in the mood, and they don't pray. But a committed traditional Jew, no matter what, they're going to pray. But, and that's a tremendous thing. That's a tremendous merit that people hold on to the tradition and put tremendous mesirat nefesh, giving their all, even if they don't feel like it. But on the other hand, sometimes when we do that, we don't even really take the time to think, well, who are we davening to? In other words, we need to say the words. We need to say them quickly. We need to get to work. So we do it. So here the Baal Shem Tov is saying that just like you have to think before you speak, but we speak the words of prayer. So here he's saying we should think first and put everything in the right context. That this whole exercise I'm about to do of prayer is going to be my attempt to connect to God. And he says, and when you do that, he says, for sure it will fall upon a person great. Here again, fear never means like to be afraid. It means just the awe that I'm going to be now davening to the creator of the universe. That is what a person should think about before they even open their mouth in prayer. And then he says that if a person has that awe of God to whom we are praying, that the words that we're going to now say will be influenced by that awe, and the words themselves will look upon with great awe. Kishenotein alibo sha'olam adibur hu hashechina, and that a person should put upon their heart that what's called the world of speech, this is connected to the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah, as we know, is connected to the sphere of Malchut, and Malchut is connected to speech. And so that's this idea of Hashem, open up my lips so I will be able to say your prayers. In other words, and are envelop the Shekhinah, are the garment of the Shekhinah. And the Shekhinah then can speak through that person. He klula mikol midot, and the Shekhinah is made up of all the different midot. Here he means like the sfirot, Yira, which is Gevura, Ahava, which is Chesed, Tiferet, which is Rachamim. V'chein kulam k'yudah. In other words, the concept of the Shekhinah includes all of the sfirot, and if we are making a place for the Shekhinah through our prayers, then we're like channeling all of the sfirot. And that's why in the Yehudim of the Arizal, that in many, many of the prayers, that in small letters above certain words, you'll have the names of the Sfirot, explaining like the flow of the Sfirot of this particular psalm or this particular prayer. ואיך לא יהיה לו יראה ובושה כשידע שמעורר השכינה בכל המידות כביכול. And how could a person not be in a state of complete awe when they realize that through their prayers they are awakening the energy of the Shekhinah to be united with them, and all of the midot, all of the sfirot. V'zeu oseh devaro she'osim medibur ma'aseh. What he's just saying right now is really important. He says, and through really everything we've been learning tonight, I hope you're as inspired as I am right now, because I've gone over this many, many times in preparation to teach it. But just giving it over tonight is just so inspiring. What can I say? So he says, so when a person has all these kavanot and are connected to God and feel like they're a channel for the Shekhinah, and through that we can connect to all of creation. So listen what he says. This is what it means in Tehillim, 103rd Psalm. It says, Oseh devaro. He does his words. Now here, I don't have it in front of me, but it could be that God will manifest the words of the person who's praying. So he says, "She'osim b'dibur ma'aseh." But here he's saying something incredibly important, that through proper kavana, proper intent when praying, that the words have the power of actions. Now, this is a very, very, very powerful statement, is that, I mean, we know that even our thoughts can influence reality. This is not just a spiritual concept. This is also in physics, in quantum physics. Even thought, the observer, the thought puts out energy. That energy affects things. And here we know that actions, of course, affect reality. But here also speech, that when we use speech in a correct way, it's like an action. It moves things, it influences things, it changes things. It has power. It has power. And this might be how we can understand throughout the ages, people go to tzaddikim to get a blessing. And the tzaddik gives a blessing. And then a person could think, well, what is that going to do? It's like, it's very, I mean, first of all, they wouldn't go if they didn't believe that there was some great meaning to it. But if we think about it, when we, let's say, get a blessing from a tzaddik, well, what do we expect to happen? Let's say a person goes for healing, to have children, to get married. And let's say the tzaddik doesn't just like, but like really gives him a strong blessing. So what we're saying here is someone who is on that level, their words become actions. And it moves things. That's when we talk about throughout the ages, miracle workers, people who can do miracles. Well, a lot of it is just through speech, but their speech becomes action. Becomes action. We actually see this in the Torah in an opposite way with Bilam. Bilam had the power to curse, and he did it through his mouth. But in most cases, it actually came true. It became action. His words, his curses, God forbid, became real. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov is saying, that the power of speech, and especially through prayer, has the power of moving, changing, uplifting, rectifying reality. Very, very deep ideas here. Very, very deep and profound ideas here. I'll tell you, I can't even think of continuing after this. That was just so amazing, so much to think about. So I'm going to end with a blessing that we take these words of the Baal Shem Tov to heart, because we all know that there are great challenges in praying. Same prayers every day. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. And the Baal Shem Tov, no doubt, one of his greatest contributions were his teachings about prayer, of how to take this most basic Jewish practice that takes a substantial amount of our time and energy, and he lifts it up and gives us the tools to make prayer such a spiritual experience. So may we all be blessed to take these words to heart and to follow them and do our best to manifest them.